Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be reacting to a video called Why Americans Eat What Europeans. Okay, so that it's a little bit concerning. The things that Europe is throwing out, then Americans are consuming this. I don't know. It's making me a little cautious. So let's check it out and comment, like, and subscribe.
It's Velveeta.
Oh, the cheese?
Cheddar.
Yeah.
Our Velveeta melts much better.
This looks like cheese, right?
Well,
But it isn't.
yeah, but
This syrup, no maple tree involved.
it's sugar.
And this was literally held together with wood pulp and sold to the consumer as Parmesan cheese.
Oh my
In
God,
the United
what?
States, you are likely eating food that's banned or tightly regulated in much of Europe. And no one's telling you. Because technically,
They don't have to?
they don't have to.
Okay.
In comparison to much of the European Union, there are far fewer protections on food labeling.
Really?
And the ones that are there are only subject to what a reasonable consumer would believe. This
What is
was,
that?
in
What's the
fact,
mean?
the basis for a U.S. district judge's dismissal of a Pop-Tart lawsuit in Chicago.
Pop-Tarts?
No reasonable consumer would believe that the filling in a Pop-Tart contained a certain amount of strawberries based on the image on the package and
Says
its
strawberry.
use of the term strawberry.
Yeah, you know
But
that there's
fake
no
foods
real
aren't
strawberries
just
here.
misleading. They're also becoming incredibly common. According to a new analysis led by researchers at Johns Hopkins, they found that more than half of the calories consumed at home by adults in the United States come from ultra-processed foods. So what is fake
makes sense
food
to me.
exactly? And
They're
how
not
did
calorie
America
dense.
become the imitation nation while Europe said no?
Is it because of capitalism?
Let's take a look.
And I thought the FDA took care of this, but probably, well, according to this, no, not really.
Fake food or imitation food is a legally defined category in the United States.
Legally?
It looks like
Okay,
food,
it's a
it's
loophole.
sold like food,
But it's not
it's
food?
chemically or structurally altered to be cheaper, longer lasting, and more marketable.
okay.
Some examples: pasteurized processed cheese product, non-dairy whipped topping,
Okay, that's why they can't call it cheese legally?
bacon bits with no bacon, wasabi
my.
from chemicals, vanilla without the bean, and truffle oil that's really just canola oil with a chemical flavorant.
What?
Same with this 100% cranberry juice.
my
100% juice blend cranberry. It is disclosed, but the size of
no
the font
way.
and the blend versus cranberry seems a bit misleading.
You
don't
have to
think?
really read it.
And listen, I get it. Part of this comes down to economics. It takes
Oh, it's
over
cheaper.
40 gallons of maple sap just to make one
Yeah.
jug of real maple syrup.
That's what's more
That's
expensive,
why
yeah.
a single bottle costs over $10, and
Yeah.
your local grocery store is flooded with a plethora of imitation syrups that don't have any maple sap at all.
It's corn
But
syrup,
hey,
yeah, that's
they're
true.
easier on your pocketbook. But the growing falsification of our foods means that literal tons of items on grocery store shelves and on restaurant plates are imitations of the real thing. Because the push for healthier, low-fat, low-sodium, low-sugar, and low-cost options
everything.
in processed foods sounds great on paper.
Yeah.
But it often means cutting out the very ingredients that gave our childhood favorites their nostalgia.
That's so ironic.
The food of your childhood did taste different,
Really?
and the legality of this practice is a bit fuzzy at best. Officially, the US does have laws on food labeling to prevent this deception on food
Yeah.
labels. Both the Food and Drug Administration, or the FDA, and the Food Safety and Inspection Service, the FSIS, have regulations and guidance documents governing food labeling claims. But so long as there have been rules, companies have been quick to find the loophole. For example,
Yeah.
while the US agreed to discontinue the labeling of sparkling wine as champagne
It is,
in a
yeah.
2006 wine trade agreement with the European
Champagne
Union,
only comes from France.
you can still find California champagne on store shelves today.
Oh, yeah,
Now,
that's not
some people
real.
have pushed back on this. Lawsuits, often class action lawsuits, are brought when the label does
Oh.
not reflect the content of the product.
Unbelievable! I always wanted to know how you elves got the stripes on your fudge stripe cookies.
So, for example, some lawsuits like fudge cookies containing no butter, whole wheat crackers made mostly of refined flour, smokehouse almonds not cooked with real smoke.
Oh my
You
god.
get my point.
Oh my god,
Many
yeah.
of the lawsuits cite the 1975 Magnuson-Moss Warranties Act, which governs warranties on consumer products at the federal level. While the act does not directly address food labeling, it can be indirectly relevant
Yeah,
when
of
food
course.
labeling claims are considered warranties. In one example, the Godiva chocolatier faced a class action lawsuit
super
for
famous.
deceptive labeling due to its Belgium 1926 packaging,
They were created there?
despite the chocolate being made in the United States.
Oh my god,
The lawsuit
what? I thought that was
alleged that the
European.
labeling led consumers to believe that the chocolate was made in Belgium,
Yeah.
implying higher quality and origin.
Yes.
Godiva argued the label indicated the company's founding year and location, but the court sided with the consumers, leading to
they
a
had to
$20
settle.
million settlement.
Oh my God,
But despite
okay.
the picture that I've painted thus far, not all fake food is bad, and in many cases, you might prefer it for your own ethical reasons, like having oat milk in your latte or a Beyond Beef
yeah, instead
patty
of
in your burger. And fake foods have also allowed those with dietary restrictions and allergies to enjoy a much broader array of dishes, like with imitation crab, which is
Yeah.
generally considered safe to eat during pregnancy because it is typically made
it's
from
not fish.
cooked pollock and other ingredients that are low in mercury. But before I
I think with these things, it's sort of, don't tell me what's in them. I don't want to know. Otherwise, I wouldn't eat it.
get too ahead of myself, I think it's important that we go back and briefly ask, how did we get here?
Mother Murphy, lucky me. My wife uses Swanson TV turkey dinners. And make your husband lucky too.
That's
Get-
not
After
turkey.
World War II, workers needed convenience and food companies stepped in, offering frozen dinners, processed cheese, and powdered eggs. Shelf life
Powdered
became
eggs.
king and flavor came from chemistry. But we didn't go from scratch made to science experiment overnight. Originally, those quick pre-made meals were still mostly recognizable. And
Really?
perhaps the best example of this is also the most universal.
Which one?
Cheese. Cheese making, which began 10,000 years ago, was originally about survival for a farm family or community,
We've been eating cheese
taking
for
a
since
very
ever.
perishable protein and transforming it into something less perishable.
Yeah.
So that there would be something to eat.
Well, yeah,
at
of
a
course you
later
want to preserve
date.
it.
Processed cheese, which was invented 107 years ago in Switzerland, is basically
Oh,
cheese
really?
that is emulsified and cooked, rendering it much less perishable. But also
Okay,
no
that's
longer
interesting.
a living food, because unlike natural cheese,
Oh, of course.
processed
It's
cheese's
cooked.
flavor will no longer alter with age. But
Yeah.
big American cheese producers, as part of our factory scale, go big or go home philosophy of food production, bought into processed cheese so heavily that the very definition of American cheese has come to be a processed product.
Yeah, it's craft.
And the most iconic of them all? Well,
What
I
was
may
that?
be biased, but for me, it's that blue box of Kraft macaroni and
Craftsingles.
cheese.
Okay, boys, come and get it.
Kraft home cooked dinners, the quick kind you cook up fresh.
yeah, they're been
Hitting
around
the store
forever.
shelves in 1937, the box
Wow.
promised to feed a family of
Older than
4
I
for
thought.
just 19 cents. And while launching a new product during the Great Depression was certainly a gamble,
Yeah. Oh,
the product
it
was
worked.
wildly successful, selling
Yeah, who
8
knew?
million boxes in the first year.
That's crazy.
Food rationing during World War II kept the product's popularity soaring.
Oh,
2
yeah.
boxes of a Kraft dinner could be purchased for 1 rationing coupon. In the 1950s, the fan favorite only had 6 ingredients, with sharp cheddar and skim milk being the most
Oh,
predominant.
but that's still, yeah, that's
However,
still cheese.
real cheese is also real expensive. So in the 1980s, while cheese was still a predominant but lesser ingredient, buttermilk powder was added to compensate. This
went
still
downhill from
gave
there.
the nostalgic meal its creamy, cheesy taste that as a kid in the 1990s, I loved. However, fast forward to the 2000s,
It had
both
changed
of
at the
those
end,
items
yeah?
have largely disappeared,
Oh.
while the ingredients list has gotten
so- yeah, it's-
longer and more chemical.
Yellow 5.
But I don't
cheese
want to
cultures.
single out Kraft too much here because today our grocery store
Kraft
shelves
singles.
are stocked with all kinds of near cheese items from easy cheese to Velveeta, again, that type
Oh my
of
God, Easy
processed
Cheese.
cheese when it was
I forgot
invented in
about that.
1918. now a dairy-based processed food with 22 ingredients that is
my
no
God.
longer regulated as cheese, but rather a pasteurized prepared cheese
It's a
product.
nebulous
To
concept.
their credit, the FDA has established SOIs, or standards of identity, for over 250 foods,
Wow.
defining their characteristics, ingredients, and sometimes production methods.
You're
For
very
example,
philosophical.
you
What is
can't just
cheese,
market
really?
yourself as a fruit jam if you don't include at least 45% fruit. And similarly,
sense to me.
whole wheat bread must be made with 100% whole wheat flour.
Exactly.
This again is why Velveeta was asked to not call themselves cheese
They
any longer
can't.
in the early 2000s.
Yeah, you
the
can't,
homogeneous orange slime, which admittedly makes for a great queso, just really isn't cheese by the FDA's definition anymore. But while SOIs do help to thwart food fraud, they're not about preserving quality, heritage, or freshness, but rather consistency with consumer expectations. And that's where I think a trip across the pond is needed to explain this difference. In a few other videos, I've explored and explained the EU's adoption of the precautionary principle,
What is
meaning
that?
prove it safe first. And I'll drop links to both my video on beef
before
and chicken in the
people
description of
consuming
this
it,
video
I think?
if you would like to watch more. And to a significant degree, the precautionary principle has kept many of the food additives, chemicals, and preservatives out of the food that we consume here in Europe. There's a higher burden to bear on behalf of the manufacturers that the chemicals that they're using in foods are safe before entering the market,
You would think
rather
that's
than
the basis.
discovering afterwards and removing it from the store
Yeah,
shelves.
you would think that's the norm.
However, the presence and power of protected foods and labels is something that I don't think gets enough attention.
Yeah.
These labels not only protect a heritage of food culture, but help consumers to more easily recognize and prefer the real deal over imitation foods. According to the European Commission, a protected designation of origin is a legal label that establishes certain requirements for labeling traditional foods and wines.
Correct.
The idea is that something about a place's geography and climate just
Make
simply
it the
can't
way
be
they are.
replicated.
Yeah.
And copying the name without producing the food properly can devalue the product.
It's illegal.
So, for example,
That's why they're
Kalamata
cheaper.
olive oil, PDO, is entirely produced in the region of Kalamata in
Yeah.
Greece,
Champagne.
using olive varieties from that area.
I'm probably there are some
Champagne
cheeses
can
as well.
only come from the Champagne region of France. Feta is a traditional Greek
Yeah.
cheese made from unpasteurized sheep or goat milk. It is not a generic name and
Correct.
must come from Greece if
Yeah, you can't
sold
just
in
call
the
it that.
EU. Gouda cheese must come from a specific region of the
Yeah.
Netherlands. Irish whiskey must be distilled and manufactured
Oh,
in
yeah.
Ireland. Black Forest ham from the Schwarzwald. Roquefort blue cheese from France.
What is that? Oh, I didn't know
Bordeaux
that one.
wine, Gorgonzola, Chianti. You get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But sadly, it is very difficult to protect these foods and their reputation from copycats once you leave the EU.
Well, but it's
And
in the
here
consumer.
again, cheese is a great example. In the European Union, Parmigiano Reggiano is a PDO cheese, meaning it can
can only
only
come
be
from there.
made in a specific region of Italy using traditional methods and ingredients. The cows that produce the milk can only eat grass and hay from pure pastures and cannot receive antibiotics or supplements.
That's
The
what the
cheese making
cheese is like that.
process must begin within 18 hours of milking, and the cheese can
That's a lot.
only include milk, rennet, which is a naturally occurring complex of enzymes used to make cheese,
Oh, it's enzymes,
and
okay.
salt. A standard size wheel of cheese is produced, one that hasn't changed for hundreds of years, and it must be cared for and aged for at least 1 year before it's sold.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, in the United States, all kinds of cheeses are passed off as Parmesan, whether you're in a restaurant or buying a pre-graded package.
Oh my God, but
it
it's
could
true,
be
yeah.
Pecorino Romano or Gran Padano. In the worst cases, they may not even be cheese,
Yeah, it's true.
as a particularly bad scandal revealed.
That's what you have to, if you want the real thing, you have to check for the DOP. Otherwise, who knows what you're getting.
Some of those canisters of cheese contained cellulose,
Well, to
or
begin with,
wood pulp.
yeah, Parmesan,
Seriously.
real Parmesan.
But
is not
even if you
coming
consider
from
foods that don't
plastic
directly
bottle.
have a protected geographical or designation, there is still a much greater degree of emphasis and legal protection on the sourcing and quality of foods consumed. The EU has a comprehensive farm-to-fork strategy that aims to create fair, healthy, and environmentally friendly food systems.
Oh my God, I
This
love that.
strategy
That's what it
includes
should be.
measures to combat food fraud with a focus on transparency and traceability throughout the food supply chain, including origin disclosure and labeling, requiring information about where food products come from.
Love
Every
that.
single item in the produce section of my chain grocery store
Oh, it tells you where they
lists
are,
where
or
it
where they
comes
came
from. And the local or regional products are highlighted. The flour
God, I
for my
love it.
cake,
From your
I can see
region.
which mill it was produced from. And all of these things taken together, the protection of foods that carry geographic and cultural heritage, as well as a food system which mandates transparency and traceability, means that when consumers head to their grocery store, they're not only better informed consumers,
Yeah.
but they reinforce a system that benefits local businesses by
Everyone
fostering
wins.
trust, enhancing product value, and enabling those businesses
And
to
you know
meet
what you're getting
increasing
and where
consumer
it came
demand
from.
for sustainable and
Yeah.
ethical food sources
because you want
without
to
increasing
you
the
know,
cost. So while Europe protected real
remain
food with
there
real
that
laws,
standard of quality.
the United States protected corporate innovation. At least for now. Every
yeah,
year, it
capitalism.
seems like there is an ever-growing awareness of the link between diet and health, including obesity, allergies, and chronic diseases, prompting consumers to scrutinize food ingredients and nutritional value. Consumers are seeking foods with fewer artificial additives and preservatives, leading to the
more natural.
rise of clean label products and grocery stores that cater
Organic.
to whole, healthy foods. But sadly, this trend is one that comes at a cost that many people just simply cannot afford.
It's not cheap.
Processed foods tend to have a lot more calories at a lower price. That's more bang for your buck than
Correct.
fresh food if you're on a budget. One piece of British research in 2023, the Broken Plate Report by the Food Foundation, found that healthy food is usually twice as expensive as less
That's
healthy
a lot of
food
money.
on a per calorie basis.
Yeah, that's a
However, buying cheaper, less healthy food can prove to be a false economy, leading to health conditions, income losses, increased living costs, and medical
Yeah, but
expenses.
if you don't
One
have the money
Harvard
right
study
now, what are you
found
gonna
that
do?
unhealthy diets result in $50 billion in additional healthcare costs every year, with copays and rising insurance premiums
Yeah, sure.
inflating American household bills. There are some heritage foods which have been legally protected in the United States, but
Which
the few
ones?
examples that do exist are contained to state level laws. For example, in Tennessee, whiskey
Tennessee
is
whiskey?
a protected name. In Tennessee, the state law, House Bill 1084, defines Tennessee whiskey and mandates that it must be produced in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Meet the definition of bourbon,
As in the
including a
name?
grain mixture with at least 51% corn, and undergo the Lincoln County process, a charcoal mellowing. It is also protected under agreements like NAFTA, now the USMCA, and in the
Okay.
EU, recognizing it as a distinctive product of the United States,
Yeah, it's an
specifically
American
produced
thing.
in Tennessee. Vidalia onions are another of these rare examples where
Wow,
an
really?
American crop is considered unique enough to deserve
That's
protected
crazy.
labeling. The
With the
Vidalia
onions.
Onion Act of 1986 codified into state law that only onions grown in 20 specific counties in Georgia can legally use the name.
Okay.
And while I think that these are a great start, they remain specialties and not standards. The real tragedy, in my opinion, for Americans is that many just don't know what they're missing when they get a low quality imitation of a truly good
Yes, it though.
food.
I don't know.
In most cases, these legal imitations won't harm anyone physically,
Yeah,
but
of
they do
course.
affect the reputation and livelihood of the people who dedicate their lives to making these foods.
Yeah, sure.
Most can't compete with the cheap commercialized imitations
course.
And those that do often have to sell at a price that makes them unattainable for the standard American family diet. And that's relevant for foods like Parmesan cheese and olive oil, but also something as simple as a tomato. Food for thought. But I would love to know what you think. Have you discovered a product that you thought was real, but wasn't? Let me know down in the comments below. And as always, if you enjoyed what you saw today, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. And for more content from Type Ashton, hit that subscribe button. So I'll see you in the next video. Cheers!
Wow, this was a really, really interesting video. I thought she mentioned so many different really good points, but I am left with, obviously, I think changes are, well, yeah, of course, there should be some changes, but I think it comes obviously, I think at a law state, at a federal level, probably, because you would have to change so many laws. But I think more than that, I think it would be, because laws, I think creating laws, I think it's easier, a simpler process. But, where it starts, I think, and where the change should actually occur is, I think, is this bigger, I think, problem to solve, if you can call it that, if it's a problem. Because there are so many companies that are involved, and like she mentioned, there's so many huge companies that really do, these billionaire companies that really do want to make a change, and they would need to want to make a change. It's not enough to just go and say, yes, we're changing the law, because that's really not enough. You would need, again, for those companies to be, it's more cost effective, I think, long term, to actually, start using, I think, real products, as in cheese. We can't call it cheese anymore because it doesn't classify legally as cheese. Let's say, we have to start adding other products and replacing this chemical products that are not really, tied with cheese. Let's start making something more similar to cheese. And obviously, I'm putting the cheese example in here because I think it's probably the easier one. But again, will those companies want to? I don't know, probably not, because there's gonna be some losses, I think, because obviously making one thing about, I think, real, I think, food, especially when it comes to good quality food, is that it's not cheap. It comes at a price, literally. And I think specifically, I think in the US, because I think there's probably less, I don't know if it's a concern, but I think, I'm going to go and say yes, it is. I think there's less of a concern about the consumers and the actual people. The laws are not really, they try to, I think it's a little bit of let's try to fix this, but it's sort of, you're not fixing the actual problem. You're just, putting a Band-Aid in a bullet hole. It's sort of similar to that, as in, yes, we're creating the laws, but if we don't really change the system, the consumer, at the end of the day, which is the one person or the one sort of unity that we are supposed to be protecting, we're not really doing that. We're just, again, the law says, you have to legally at least call it, if it's not cheese, or if it's not whatever sort of product, if it's not bread, you can't call it bread. If it's not jam, you can't, or marmalade, or whatever it is, or fruit produce, you can't call it that. And again, those are good things, but that's not really, I don't know, if it's helping you as a consumer, at least be, maybe the red flags start to appear. If you're obviously, you probably should be a little bit more concerned about what you're eating. Then you kind of go, you know what, this is not real cheese. What do you mean this is not cheese? No, it's a product, I can't remember how exactly it is called. It's sort of derived from cheese, or a product really resembling cheese. So again, it's sort of, I can see why they're doing this and how it's been like that, because that's, I think, the more manageable model. I think that can sort of semi work for both. Obviously, the companies are still winning. Those big, huge companies are still coming out on top. But I think it's a way to sort of protect the consumers, but are they really protecting them? The whole, again, it's just, we're letting you know, hey, FYI, this isn't real bread, but it's really small. The juice one really surprised me, because I thought, I know it's not just bread. I would think that's real juice, because it's, I don't know, what else would it be? But then you say you have to read the small label, and the small label says, oh, by the way, this isn't exactly, 100% cranberry juice. It's something else. So it is, well, you have to really do, and again, that's on the consumer's part, I guess, and maybe there's some responsibility that you as a consumer should probably have, as in, yeah, what exactly am I eating, what I'm putting into my body. I think in recent years, I think probably, yeah, in the last probably decades, well, I don't know if decades, but in the last few years, I think there's been a growing, I think, concern, like she mentioned, about people being more, yeah, just aware of what they're eating. I think there was a time period, I think probably, I don't know, before the 90s, I'm gonna to say a number, but I think before that, people were just mindlessly, whatever, oh yeah, that's cereal, I'm just going to grab it. Or again, that's cheese, well, it looks like cheese, I'm gonna have it. I think these days people are definitely more aware, and there's been, hey, what exactly are you eating, and what are you consuming? And read the label, always read the label. And I think it's not enough to go sort of to lead with the whole, oh, the small label or the big label. No, you have to actually read the ingredients, because like she mentioned, it can be deceiving. And more than that, I think that's when it comes to a state and law level, to a federal level, it says, for instance, the jam, I think it's a perfect example. Oh, you're saying, oh, it's jam, it's made out of fruit. And yeah, sure, you can go and it's fruit, I'm consuming fruit. But it's not really, because no, it's legally, I think it was 40% juice, but fruit produce, but the other 60%, it's God knows what. So it's, well, you're thinking you're safe, but I think you also have to look into the laws and say, hey, what is this? What is forbidden? What is it? At what level can they legally call it one thing, and what, under what conditions this can be referred to as this product, as, so, I don't know, champagne juice, whatever. So it is, well, champagne was a really bad example, but whatever it is that you're getting, you really do have to do your research, which I think it's crazy to live in a day and age in which you have to do this, and you can't just sort of mindlessly just grab something that looks good. Maybe check the ingredients and see, yeah, sure, if this looks good, this has less, I think, preservatives and less, I don't know, food dyes and stuff, or less sugar. But you shouldn't have to be, you shouldn't have to do this, I think, every single day of, well, you're not buying groceries every single day of your life, but I think it's such a hassle to do this. I think if you're going, and again, I know that probably the medium American is not really shopping every 3 days. But, you're not going to say, I'm going for groceries and I'm going to be there with my phone in hand and looking up everything that, hey, what is this? Because obviously they all have weird names, because they're all a bunch of chemicals. So you're not going to be looking, hey, what is this? If this is dangerous, what is this? Or again, the state laws that, hey, can you call it this if it's not that? That seems crazy. It's, again, I think Europe definitely there has the upper hand, as in I think you're a little bit safer. That doesn't mean, of course, maybe some things and really do slip out of the system or something. And you should definitely just be aware, whether you live in Europe or in the US. I think you should always be aware of what you're eating and what ingredients the things that you're getting have. But again, Europe, I think, has it better, absolutely. Just because the way things are handled over there, I think it's, yes, of course, the United States should definitely follow along those steps. But I love that everything, even because obviously I'm talking about processed foods, which I know that those shouldn't be, I think, the core part of your diet. But I love that they also do the origin in produce as well. Because again, it makes you, I think, more connected. Obviously it's informative and it's good, but I think in a more, I think, deeper level, also lets you know, because it's good to know, hey, your tomatoes came from here, your bananas were grown there, your avocados were here, or your onions were grown, whatever. And oh, you know what, I think it makes you a little bit more, I don't know, just more, even it's just not curiosity, because I think some people just do not care, really. I don't care about knowing where did the carrot that I'm consuming came from. But I think that definitely does. I think especially if you start, I think, incorporating, I think, this, and hey, wouldn't you like to know where your produce actually came from? I think it really makes you, I think, more connected with both, I don't know, just nature in general. And I think probably helps you being a little more aware, I think, like she mentioned, about all the other people, because I think produce and all the things that you're eating up to that point, and obviously that has to do with everything, because even the ultra processed foods, they didn't appear just, no one I don't know, said a spell and it's done magic and a burger appeared. No, the things people are in charge of doing this. So I think it makes you a little bit more connected. and I think a little bit more aware of, oh, there are actual people that grew this, people in their farms that actually are doing this and are putting in the work. So I think it makes you a little bit more connected with both. I think your society probably helps you to, I don't know, be a better human in general, but also I think helps you connect a little bit more with the land, with nature. And that's really, I think I love that. It's really good. Although I will say because she mentioned, yeah, obviously and obviously in the US that's definitely the case. Organic and usually not the safer, but I think again the more natural, the more natural option or the healthier option that tends to be the organic one, or the one containing less sugar or less additives. Those the ones that are better for you. Those are and she mentioned, I think double times more expensive, and it is absolutely the case. And obviously, long term, I think you're probably gonna have. That doesn't necessarily mean people sometimes eat really badly, and they just they have ultra processed diets, and they're okay, they're doing okay, and maybe they'll live to 100. But because again, there are no guarantees. Nobody knows this. But you're probably increasing your chances of probably leading probably a less healthier life if you are again consuming a lot of ultra processed foods. And long term, that I get how that's going to be. It's not going to be good for you. It's probably going to be more expensive. Both, I think, in a personal level, as you're going to be less healthy, and obviously with that comes a whole array of issues, and you're just going to feel worse, basically. But also, like she mentioned, also monetarily, it's going to be worse long term because maybe you're going to have more bills. You're going to end up at a hospital. You're going to end up with a condition. Stuff like that, which I get it. And yes, I think looking at the macro level of things, that's definitely the case. However, I think it's really hard to actually push, I think, things and push people into buying, I think, more healthier options if that's the case, especially, I mean, obviously not the average person, but I think people that are struggling. Because you can tell, and I can say this and I can discuss this with someone, and they're probably going to be, I absolutely agree with you. However, I don't really have the money. So how? Because I think most people, especially I think in this day and age, they live paycheck to paycheck. Especially I think a lot of places in the US have, sadly, that's really the case. So how they really, I can't physically afford, to buy healthier things or just buy the organic option, because I can't afford it. So even though I know it's going to be probably worse for me long term, I really cannot afford it now, because I think that's the thing about poverty in general, which I think is really, I think it's easier, I think, if you're on the other side, to just go, hey, but it's a long-term investment and it's going to be better, long-term. But that's the thing about poverty, or people with low sort of resources. They don't really think about that. Long-term doesn't exist for them, just because they don't have, they can't make any investments, just because they don't have the liquid sort of cash or assets to actually invest in this. So they're probably going to tell you, how am I going to invest in my health if I don't have the money right now? So yeah, that's really nice. And yeah, some people, I think it can definitely work, for some people, but there are others which I think would probably be a lot of people in the US that really they simply cannot make the switch. So I think it would be up to probably the companies or the government to try to, I don't know, but I can't, I don't have the solution. And so really, I think it's a tough, I think subject, just because there are no easy solutions. It has to come, I think, again, to a federal level. The government should probably get involved, but also the companies. And I don't know, probably it would be you can't force companies, to, hey, start using real produce or real products in your products. It's because, well, no, they can't. They're going to lose money. And of course, those huge billionaire companies, they're not going to want to lose, money, and they're not going to want to lose anything. So yeah, of course, they're going to tell you no. So it is a really hard thing, but I don't really have the solution. So I think it's a hard thing. Hopefully in the future things evolve. I don't know. I don't have a magical solution. I don't really know. But hopefully, I don't know. We don't have to wait 50 years in order for this to be solved. But yeah, ideally, I think it should be, or more organic, I think, products, and probably less processed products should ideally come into the market to a cheaper price, basically, for the consumer. That would be the ideal option. Only that I don't know how to achieve that, but I think ideally in a few short years, let's say 5 years, this starts to change. Hopefully that would be the case, and yes, but make it more like Europe. And I think Europe maybe I don't have any. I think they have a perfect system apparently. Because looking at it like this, it sounds incredible. So yeah, definitely let's replicate that. And Europe, well, stay doing what you're actually doing right now because it's perfect. But that was it for today, and I'll see you next time. Bye.